years, I've been an attorney for abused and neglected kids and for parents in the juvenile courts here in Iowa. Like Senator Tom Harkin, I started my career at Legal Aid, helping people who could not afford an attorney. For the last 20 years, it's been my job, my literal job, to stand up in a courtroom and fight for people who need somebody to fight for them. And that is exactly my intention to do the very same thing in the United States Senate. We need a strong, outspoken advocate for Iowans, and I will do that job in the US Senate. I'll tell you a little bit about my upbringing and my family. My dad is one of 15 siblings from a poor family here in central Iowa. One of my grandmothers is from Mount Ayr in southern Iowa, and my great-great-grandparents had a farm in Ziering, which is near Ames. My dad moved out to California. He joined the Marines and lived with an older sibling before that. I was born at the Camp Pendleton Marine Corps base in Oceanside. My mom was in high school. When she became pregnant with me, she dropped out to have me. Neither of my parents have more than a high school education, but because they had good union jobs, I got to go to good public schools and go on to work my way through college and law school. Thanks very much.
All right, thank you, Kimberly. Next in line would be Eddie Mauro. Take it away, Eddie.
Hey, thanks, Scott. Thanks, Jill. And thanks to the Pottawattamie Dems for hosting us tonight. I'm here today because Iowans are looking for a leader that will address the problems facing our communities with the courage and the urgency that this moment in time demands. My roots in Iowa communities run deep in rural, urban, and suburban areas. And not just when I was growing up, but to this day, which connects me to all of Iowa like no other person here in this race. I came from humble beginnings. My mom, she cleaned houses for a living. My dad, after he left the Navy, became a lifelong teacher and coach, which is all I wanted to be. And it's what I became, a union teacher. And as a former teacher and coach in rural and urban communities, I learned firsthand how important our education was to our state. Today, I'm a small business owner that impacts every county in Iowa. And because of that leadership, because of the work that I do with business owners across this state, I've been involved in ways, in crises that no others have. And I've also been involved in community service and advocacy work over my lifetime, work on behalf of Iowans, workers' rights, farmers' rights, women's rights, and so much more. And I've been doing that not only in Iowa, but across the country, across the world. And I bring a level of preparedness and crisis management that is unparalleled, having led a business through 2 crises already, and now a 3rd, leading other small businesses through the same. And people are yearning today for honesty. They're yearning for truth, even if it's hard truth. People are looking for empathetic leaders that'll listen and understand. And I don't talk about improving schools and hospitals and mental health services. I don't just talk about protecting Social Security and Medicare, creating a fair economy that includes small business owners and workers, and a farm bill that truly meets the needs of the family farmer first. I walk that walk. And nobody in this field has been grounded in the communities as a work to improve the lives of Iowans in the ways that I have, especially Joni Ernst. And right now, Iowans need a voice in the US Senate who offers leadership, who offers honesty, who offers empathy, someone that can deliver action, who understands you. And I want to be that voice for Iowans. And together we're going to go build a better America. And I'm looking forward to answering your questions here today. Thanks so much.
All right, thank you very much, Eddie. And our next up is Mike Franken.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Scott. Hello, Pottawattamie County. So my name's Mike Franken. I live in Sioux City, Iowa. I'm a retired Vice Admiral. I'm running to unseat Joni Ernst. My platform centers on addressing climate change through agriculture principally, providing comprehensive health care, and attacking the corruption that is fed by Wall Street special interests. I won't list the reasons why Joni must go, but I will tell you that I can get things done. Having spent over a decade in Washington, D.C., 3 tours in legislative affairs, ship captain, battle group captain, land force commander, head of a defense agency, stood it up from the scratch, and head of large organizations, got a rather a hefty resume of service to this nation. What did I learn in my 36 years retiring as a Vice Admiral? that there's simpatico between Iowa values and good governance. And it's my job to bring that to Washington, D.C. I take pride in a learned Democrat. I come from the most Republican area of the country, youngest of 9, a 4th generation farm family. Dad was a wounded World War II vet. Mom was a one-room schoolhouse teacher. We were apolitical, but everybody around us was generally a Republican. But in the course of my education in life, I learned empathy, good governance, Iowa values, and experience in Washington, D.C., and where we need additional help. I have additional desires. This pandemic shows that we need to really fix healthcare, but also we shouldn't build this country back to what it was. Status quo doesn't work. We need a different nation. We need to do something dramatically different. And I want to be that person to work the infrastructure, the national service programs, the tenets for America as it should be. Secondly, I'm a veteran. I'm a young veteran, but I am a seasoned veteran. I'd be the most senior military officer ever in the U.S. Senate. I look forward to representing vet issues, and Pottawattamie County has a plethora of vets, and my hat's off to them. Lastly, international relations. Having moved 28 times, lived on 4 continents, I understand cultures worldwide. We need to completely repair our international relationships. This president did terrible, terrible tragedy to those. That includes our trade, our relationships, and to ensure that we don't go to war unnecessarily as a nation. I'm Admiral Mike Franken. Look forward to answering your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mike. We will now get into the question and answer portion of our event tonight. Our first question was submitted by Jill Shudak, Vice Chair of our county party. The question is, what sets you apart from the other candidates here today? Is there any particular issue or legislation that you are most passionate about? And the first candidate up to ask that question is Theresa Greenfield.
Well, Jill, thanks for that question, and I am delighted to be here today. As you know, I'm a businesswoman, I'm a mother, and I'm certainly a scrappy farm kid. And just as Iowa is going through incredibly tough times right now, I know about tough times, and I know how to be a strong leader. You know, our state is a state of small towns and small businesses. And as someone who's been the president of small business, I know how difficult it is to keep those lights on. And right now, so many small businesses, doors are closed, and they need a leader that will help them get their lights back on so they can provide jobs and sign paychecks. I'm also the mother of 4 kids that are out of the house. And I'll tell you what, I know what it's like to sit at the kitchen table and make really tough decisions. You know, as a single mom, you had to decide, how do you put milk in the refrigerator? Can you pay the rent? How do you buy those prescriptions? And I'll tell you what, as a scrappy farm kid, I remember growing up during the farm crisis. I grew up on hard work, and our farmers are struggling again. Net farm income's down 75%. Bankruptcy rates are up for an 8-year high. I'll be fighting for our hardworking farm families. You know, one issue that I'm really passionate about, though, is Social Security. You know, after my first husband died, I'll never forget getting that first Social Security check and what it meant to me to be able to work to get back on my feet. So when Senator Joni Ernst talks about privatizing Social Security, going behind closed doors to gut it, I said no way and got in this race. Look, I've got the grit, I've got the resolve and the resiliency to fight for this seat in every county and every township for absolutely every vote. And I am thrilled about the proud of the grassroots team that we have been building all over this state, including the endorsement of AFL-CIO last week. And finally, I'm not taking one dime of corporate PAC donations. This is a grassroots organization. I'm running to put Iowa first and to put hardworking families first.
All right, thank you very much, Theresa. Next up will be Kimberly Graham. And as soon as I find her, I will pin her. There is she.
I'm going to have to when I'm done with this, just so everyone knows, I'm going to be standing up to go put my blinds down. There's a window in front of me and the sun's just getting low enough that it's going to blind me in a moment here. So I apologize. Um, Thanks for that question, Jill. What sets me apart from the other candidates here today? There are a lot of things. I think that we all have very, very different experiences and we all have valuable experiences. I've been working since I was 14 years old. My parents divorced when I was 13, and if I wanted anything but food and a bed, I had to pretty much go pay for it myself, and so I did. I've worked as a waitress. I've worked in a dry cleaner. That was my first job. I've cleaned people's houses. I've run errands. I worked 3 jobs while I was in college until I got really lucky and found one job as a flight attendant for American Airlines that I could do only on the weekends. When I got hired, I was the low end on the totem pole, which means you get the worst schedule, and the worst schedule is weekends, all weekends, which was great, and I was grateful for that. Because then I could go to school during the week. So I worked my way through college while I was an American Airlines flight attendant. While I was there, I was a volunteer union organizer. My dad was a lifelong union member. He was in the Pile Drivers Union. My mom was a Communication Workers of America union worker. She lucked out and got a job at the phone company as a clerk. My son's father is an IBEW electrician here in central Iowa. And for 13 years, I was a union member as well. So I think I uniquely understand because my parents were both union workers and I've been a union worker and organizer, how critically important unions are to the health of our economy and to the health of our families in the United States. I realized this morning at a different forum we were all at, that I've actually lived in rural Iowa longer than any of the other candidates that are running. I lived in Indianola and raised my son there for 25 years. And I think that helps inform what you need to know to be an effective senator for a state that by geography is mostly rural, by population mostly urban, but you have to be able to understand the issues for both. I also have spent the last 20 years actually standing up and fighting for Iowans, and none of the other people who are running for this seat have done that as their actual work, as their paid work. So I think you need to look at what somebody's already done. I've been standing up and fighting for Iowans for 20 years, and I intend to do that in the United States Senate. Thanks.
All right, thank you very much. Next up will be Eddie Mauro.
Hey, thanks, Jill, for asking the question. I think there's a handful of things that separate me from the other candidates, all good candidates, and all of us would be better than Joni Ernst. But I think this primary has a consequence. It's a serious one we need to talk about. What sets me apart is part of it is what I've done as a community leader, an organizer, an advocate. What I've done as a leader in education in the classroom to help teachers and help schools improve. What I've done as a leader in the business world gives me a diversity of leadership that others don't have. I have a diversity in geography, having lived and worked and played and connected to rural and urban communities. I have a diversity of coalitions that I fought for that support me today, including a lot of workers, a lot of teachers, a lot of nurses, roofers, plumbers, steam fitters, and more. A lot of rural leaders, the Black community, Latino community, the Asian community, the LGBTQ communities that I've been partnered with and standing to walk alongside of for many, many years. And that sets me apart from a lot of folks. I've also passed legislation. I've been able to demonstrate that I can get things done. Helping on mental health, helping on immigrant rights, helping improve infrastructure, which created union jobs and union work. Someone that's led a business through crises, 2 of them so far, in 2000 and 2009, and now a 3rd one right now, and then leading thousands of other businesses, helping guide them through a very tumultuous time. I didn't quit when time got tough. I didn't shortchange workers or contractors or close my doors. I will work to fight through all of those types of crises, and I'll fight for all the Americans again. And the issue about leadership and honesty and integrity today is very, very important because we're missing that at the federal level. We need to close the delta that is so evident as a result of COVID relative to workers and education and rural communities that are lacking all the tools and resources to fight through this. You ask what I'm passionate about? I'm passionate about fighting for Iowans. 80% of this state living paycheck to paycheck. 50% of this state, $500 hiccup away from financial ruin. Small businesses the same way. That was before COVID. And now we see what's going on. And we need a leader today that can go fight for Iowans in a meaningful way, one that's worked right here in Iowa, one that's led in Iowa, whether I got paid for it or not, didn't make a difference. I've been making those fights. Thanks for asking.
All right, and we will move along to Mike Franken.
Hi, everyone. Regarding best qualified, I'm pleased to be one of 5 running in this race of great individuals. I guess what really sets me off is one time when I had my career at risk, being stared down by 18 seniors about going to war. I said, nah, we shouldn't do this for the following reasons, rat-a-tat-tat. I was right that day. There were more Mike Frankens in the room. Perhaps this nation would have been spared a 20-year combat in Iraq and a stain on our national id for generations to come. I'm rural born and bred. I know how to make decisions. I specialize in not making wrong decisions. I have legislative experience, more than 6 years on the Hill, working for a senator, none other than Ted Kennedy, the lion in the Senate, doing 3 principal jobs for him: military affairs, political affairs, and also technical and rural issues in Massachusetts. And then ultimately, chief of legislative affairs, bringing $150 billion budgets forward during a time of sequestration. I have national security cred, living all over the world, knowing national leaders, foreign policy experts, and national security experts, and living it, doing it, sitting at the table, signing international agreements. It's a different it's a different level of activity. I've led large organizations as big as 6,700. I started a defense agency with 5 other organizations, bringing them together, and it was union as well. I have combat experience, more than I care to talk about. A lot of national service. I won the award for DOD for environmental stewardship. 1,000 different entities. I won the award for DOD. I have a special needs and a mental illness in my family. I know how to deal with that. I have corporate and 501c board experience. I've been a foster parent. I've been an adoptive parent. I've been asked to work with cultures and squash things like piracy with minimal loss of life. And those things I can do. I'm not owned by anyone. Not a soul, other than the body politic in the state of Iowa. Look forward to working for you.
Thank you, Mike. And we'll go next to Cal Woods, who was muted. Jill, can we get Cal unmuted?
I believe he has muted himself, so I cannot unmute him.
Should be at the bottom left of your screen.
Scott, I'm unable to mute him.
Yeah, I think it's on his end.
Yeah.
I think he's trying to find it right now. It's on. Okay, we will move on while Cal tries to figure that out. We'll go ahead and move on to the next question, which the first candidate to answer will be Kimberly Graham. And the question was submitted from Jerry Fredrickson. Joni Ernst has been criticized for taking dark money from Iowa Values, a political nonprofit. How have you and how will you adhere to campaign finance law boundaries? And let me get Kimberly pinned up.
Ready?
Yes.
Okay, good. So thanks for that question, Jerry. How would I adhere to campaign finance boundaries? Well, To be really honest, that's a pretty low bar. I mean, anybody who's running for US Senate should be able to adhere to campaign finance boundaries because, to be honest, they're far too generous. There's way too much dark money and corporate money allowed in politics right now. I can tell you that our campaign is not only not taking corporate PAC money, but to be really blunt, that's a very low bar. I don't think any Democrat should be taking any corporate PAC money, period. And that's because we have such an oversized influence of corporate money in politics already that we don't need any people representing us who are in any way beholden or influenced by corporate entities at this point. But what's more important, I think, is that we don't find ways to end run around that. There are candidates running for this office who have taken a lot of corporate lobbyist money. Lobbyists for the pharmaceutical industry, lobbyists for the healthcare industry, lobbyists for big tobacco. And I don't think that that's how we get rid of the corruption in Washington. We don't go there with people donating thousands and thousands of dollars to our campaign that have a hugely vested interest in bending our ear once we get into the US Senate. So we're not taking any corporate lobbyist money either. And I think it's really important that anyone running for this seat doesn't do that. It's also important that you know this, our average donation to our campaign, and I mean in total, not our average online donation, which some other campaigns have cited, but our average total donation is about 25 bucks. We have over 7,000 donors to this campaign. This is truly a $1, $5, $10, people pitching in what they can, kind of a grassroots movement that we have going. One of the other campaigns running here, their average donation overall is about $500 per donor. I don't consider that a grassroots campaign. That is a very high dollar campaign where a lot of very wealthy people have been funding that candidate. And I think it's really important that we pay attention to where our candidates' money is coming from. It's public record. You can go to opensecrets.org or the FEC reports, and you can read exactly where your candidate's money is coming from. Please go read where mine's coming from. I'd be proud for you to see it. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Kimberly. I'm going to go right back to Cal Woods now. We got that technical difficulty fixed. So, Cal, if you'd like to go ahead and give your thoughts on the first or the second question, I guess we can.
Yeah, I'll take the second question first. I have not, nor will I take any dark money or corporate PACs, number one. That's the easy part. Number two, I worked as a reporter for 16 years and working as a reporter and interviewing thousands of Iowans along the way, from political candidates to homeless folks, farmers, corporate types, working people, people who've just had their best day ever and people who've had their worst day ever. You cannot help but develop a sense of empathy. And I think I have a pretty strong sense of empathy, and it's been a great opportunity. Secondly, in 16 years as a reporter, I think I developed a pretty good skill for asking the tough questions. And whoever ends up debating Joni Ernst, I think are going to have to ask some really tough questions. And let's start with how she got her start. Let's back up to the year 2013 when Joni was one of about a half dozen relatively unknown Republicans running for the nomination for the United States Senate. And she was plucked out of relative obscurity by the Koch brothers and invited to their millionaires and billionaires retreat in Santa Ana, New Mexico. And she was anointed by the Koch brothers at that time and had millions of dollars thrown to her campaign by the Koch brothers and their millionaire and billionaire friends. So the Koch brothers don't do that sort of thing without expecting return on their investment, and she has delivered. Most notably and most recently with the renewable fuel standard waivers, which we have given to some 85 plus refineries now. They were intended for small refineries. We've given those to the big ones, the Chevrons and the Exxons as well. So Joni Ernst has come through, and it's cost for the oil companies and the Koch brothers and their ilk, and it's cost Midwestern farmers probably about 1.4 million bushel demand for corn. It was shameful. It's unconscionable with the betrayal that she exhibited to Midwestern farmers in favor of the big refineries. So we can draw a straight line from the Koch brothers, and I will get back to them in a minute. I see my time is almost up, but I just want to mention very briefly, we can draw a straight line from the Koch brothers and where the Koch family got their money. Their father, Fred Koch, was building refineries for the Nazis, for Hitler, prior to World War II. That's how they got their start in the business. They continued that oil refining business, And that's the kind of support that Joni Ernst has right now. The family that got their start building refineries for Hitler and his war machine in World War II.
All right, thank you, Cal. We'll move on next to Eddie Mauro.
Yeah, thanks.
Take it away.
So, money and power is probably one of the top two issues that we have in our democracy today. It impacts workers' rights, farmers' rights, education, healthcare, climate, and so much more. And Joni Ernst, as the previous folks have all said, and we all say the same thing, she sold out the state to special interests, to big industry, to fat cats like the Koch brothers, and they have supported her well. And Iowans deserve better. Iowans can do better than that. But you know what? This happens from both sides of the aisle. The Democratic establishment is broken as well. So the system's broken on both sides. There's leadership PAC money that funds chosen candidates from both sides. And that money's coming from pharmaceutical companies. It's coming from fossil fuel industry companies. It's coming from big ag. And that money's going to be used to not allow us to advance in a transformative way what's going on with the underlying issues that we've seen before COVID and have been exposed even further since. And that includes taking care of workers. That includes taking care of our teachers, our nurses, our frontline people. That includes making sure we have progressive policy when it comes to farmers in our rural economy. That comes when we're going to do something really meaningful on healthcare and on climate. We don't beat Joni Ernst by doing more of the same. We don't make the transformative change needed in Washington by running the same kind of campaigns. And that's why this primary has such a serious consequence. We don't need another Joni. We need a transformative leader that wants to make sure they can stand up to those that special interest money that's coming in. And that's gonna be very, very critical. Otherwise, we're gonna have the status quo. And Iowans deserve better than the status quo. Americans are demanding more than the status quo. And again, that's why I think I'm the best leader. I know I'm the best leader in this race. I can put together the resources necessary to win without having to rely on leadership money, without having to rely on special interest money to get it done.
All right, thank you very much. Next, we'll go to Mike Franken.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Jerry, for the question. I think it's much more deep and round, that question, than just a quick answer. So let's go into that. First of all, Joni Ernst is going to go down in November. She'll get beat. I told party leadership this over a year ago, that she's on this hijacked airliner and the carnival show is going to come to a screeching end. They didn't think that. They weren't so invested in the state of Iowa, but I disagree 100%. So regarding campaign finance, we need to ensure that our person on the Hill gets there cleanly and stays there cleanly for the duration of their tour, preferably 2 tours or so in the Senate to get that necessary leadership. We also need to realize that this person most likely will be the senior Democrat in the state of Iowa. Ultimately, in 2022, when we win that race as well, the senior senator will be the Democrat that we elect in 2020. So that person has to be clean. So we've just recently ran an ad, TV ad, paid for by people who trust me, individuals, friends, people I've known for 60 years, and people I've worked with from all walks of life, including Iowans I served with on ships, including Iowans who are ambassadors in Africa, a full mix of individuals who trust me, may be Republicans, but they trust me. And I think that's the key. Also, ultimately, you've got what's sensible in funding your campaign and what's lawful. The lawful, as Kimberly was saying, is easy. That's logical. But what's really sensible is where that Iowa values comes. So this is kind of the Solomonic decision between who's going to stay clean and who's going to become kind of like Joni Ernst. That we can't afford. Iowa's got too big of a role in this nation as we come out of this pandemic and build a better country.
Thank you, Mike. Moving on, I think the last one to answer this question will be Theresa Greenfield.
Jerry, great question. Thanks for coming tonight. Look, Washington is corrupted with big corporate PACs and their money on all the issues we care about, whether it's healthcare, whether it's taking climate action, whether it's rebuilding our farm economy here. We need to get big money out of our politics, and I am running to put Iowa first. You know, as I've crisscrossed the state and shown up to listen to Iowans in all corners of the state, healthcare is the #1 thing they talk to me about. It costs too much. They can't afford it. One of the things they can't afford are their prescription drug prices. Senator Joni Ernst, she does not support allowing Medicare to negotiate for prescription drug prices. Why? Because while Iowans are getting gouged with high drug prices, she's been getting big PAC donations from Big Pharma to fund her campaign. Look, on the farm, there were no boy jobs and there's no girl jobs. There's just jobs that need to get done. And one of the jobs we have to do is end political corruption. I put a plan out to do that, and it starts with ending Citizens United, banning corporate PACs, ban dark PACs, or make them disclose who their donors are so we know who is investing in our campaigns. We need to strengthen the FEC so they can investigate Senator Ernst. Look, Senator Ernst told us she was going to be different, right? Independent, make them squeal. But instead, she got caught illegally coordinating with a dark money group set up by her top political aides to benefit her campaign. Now that sounds shady to me. I'm taking a pledge not to accept one dime of corporate PAC monies, and End Citizens United has endorsed our campaign. I'm thrilled, and I'm running to put Iowa first, our hardworking families first. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. We will move on to the next question. And Eddie Mauro will be the first candidate to answer this question. I see his video is back on, so that's good. This was submitted by Karen Cedeno Purdue. Passing an upgrade to the Violence Against Women Act, VA or VAWA, seems to be having difficulty passing the Senate. While Iowa Senator Joni Ernst seems to be for continuing VAWA, she doesn't approve of the inclusion of the boyfriend loophole, which treats the boyfriend or partner as a domestic abuser just as it would be a spouse. This could impact the gun rights of the abuser, but is likely to save many lives. If you were elected as a senator from Iowa, would you vote to improve VAWA with this additional provision?
So thanks, Karen, for asking the question. And this kind of ties into the previous question about power and money. Joni Ernst has been given a lot of money, either directly or indirectly, either from donors directly or through legislative PACs or through roundabout ways, a lot of money. And then she is corrupted then by that money, cannot vote to stand with women. Something I've been doing for a very long time, assisting domestic violence survivors and human trafficking survivors, especially in Pottawattamie and Mills County in your neighborhoods there. And that's very important we're able to do that. So the easy answer, support closing the boyfriend loophole. Absolutely, we need to do that. There's so much more we need to be doing to reduce gun violence in our communities. And we can do that, but still respect the Second Amendment. Have the guardrails there that help reduce gun violence, suicide, domestic violence, deaths and injuries. And then the murders that wake us up all the time on television, in a school, in a movie theater, in a church or some other setting. I gotta tell you, Karen, our campaign was a leader on this back last fall with our first commercial. If you haven't seen it, go check it out at eddiemauro.com. It's a hard-hitting piece. Joni Ernst hated it. The NRA hated it. Got hundreds of thousands of views. Dana Blash from the NRA came out and denounced it. And Fox News and Joni Ernst both challenged me to come on to Fox News. And Joni Ernst had kind of a grin on her face thinking I wouldn't show up. But you know what happened? I showed up. Because I'm not afraid to take the hard fight to people. And I've done that all my life. I've stood up and fought for workers. I stood up and worked for farmers. I stood up and worked for teachers. I'm standing up and fighting for the LGBT community and so much more. And I want to fight to make sure we can reduce gun violence in our communities. I've taken that fight to City Hall to improve schools and infrastructure in our communities. I've taken that fight to the State House to improve mental health in our state. I'm ready to take the fight to the gun lobby and any other special interest that's out there on both sides of the aisle. They're going to keep us from moving forward on the real transformative change I keep using that word because we need that that intentional transformative change to fix what's ailing this country. And money gets in the way of that. So it's a great question, Karen. I appreciate you asking.
Thank you, Eddie. Up next will be Mike Franken. Oh, I hit the wrong button. And
Hi, everyone. Mike Franken here. I don't want to go negative on Joni, but she made a choice in life. She worked real hard to get elected using three things: rural America, I'm a vet, and I got that vet moxie thing, and I've got all the goodness of being a vet, and then also the pig thing, which is we don't want to talk about. So let's go back to the vet thing, or the veteran. So she uses the precepts of leadership and how she'll stand up for things as a veteran. But she totally washes that away once she's elected. In the military, you treat everyone the same. It's a very flat organization. There's not special dispensation for you as a commander or the woman who's a seaman or the old guy who's an admiral. Everybody's the same, and everybody has rights, especially rights to against violence. And so when a service member has issues, and these are, remember, people that are screened for the job and trained for the job, will take that person's access to a weapon away. So why is it that as a civilian, they don't have that same justification, dear Joni? Why are you using this? Because in the military, you don't have NRA paying you to $3 million or so. You're supposed to be clean with your decisions, and she's not. So nobody's going to gunsplain me. I had 4,000 people in a combat theater. I was a couple hundred yards from the fence, and we didn't let just any Yahoo walking around with a gun. You had to be trained. You had to be qualified, and I'd like to see that in America. But I'd really like to see it so that those who are most at risk at violence, usually the spouse of a gun owner, has a way to be protected. And she has voted against this consistently, and I don't expect it'll change in the next sitting of the next session of Congress, and that needs to change. I can't wait. I said before this, that I want NRA to send their best person to discuss guns. And I'm happy to be that counterweight. Thank you.
thank you. Moving on to Cal Woods.
Unmuted now, Scott?
Yes, you're perfect.
Very good. Unfortunately, about half of the women in this country who are homicide victims of gun violence, it's either their boyfriend or their husband or their former boyfriend or their husband in almost half of the cases. And unfortunately, if the ex-boyfriend or husband or current boyfriend or husband is able to get a gun, the woman is 5 times as likely to be a homicide victim. We need to end the boyfriend loophole. There was a police officer, the police chief in Houston, Texas, has made one of the most compelling arguments that I've ever heard for ending the boyfriend loophole. So if a husband abuses his wife, he's no longer eligible to get a gun. But if a boyfriend abuses his girlfriend, he can still get a gun. Art Acevedo, the police chief in Houston, Texas, made one of the most compelling arguments I've ever heard for closing the boyfriend loophole. One of his officers was responding to a domestic dispute. He responded to the home. The boyfriend was there with his girlfriend. He had a gun, and he shot and killed the officer. If you haven't yet seen that clip from Police Chief Art Acevedo, it's worth taking a look at. He takes to task the NRA, the senators from Texas, Ted Cruz and John Cornyn, and it's the most compelling argument you'll ever see for ending the boyfriend loophole, and we need to end that now. Thank you.
Thank you. And we will move on to Theresa Greenfield.
All right, thank you so much for the question. Look, every person needs to feel safe in their home. And I will always stand with women. when it comes to domestic violence. You know, 1 in 3 women experience some type of domestic violence. And I had the chance to stop by and visit with the Iowa Coalition Against Domestic Violence and learn more about the work that they do across this state. You know, they provide counseling and they serve maybe tens of thousands of women. They provide emergency housing and so many other services, and they need the Violence Against Women Act to be reauthorized, and we must do that. In addition, we must close the boyfriend loophole. But I'll tell you what, I'll go further. We have to oppose the changes to Title IX that undermine the rights of survivors on our college campuses. Look, I am thrilled to be in this fight, and I'm thrilled to be endorsed by the Brady campaign and the Giffords. Look, if you really want to make change, here's how we do it. We elect more women. We did it in 2018 when we elected Cindy Axne and Abby Finkenauer, and we're going to do it here in 2020. And I'll tell you, as I build my strong grassroots team across this state, I am just overwhelmed with a number of women who are stepping up to volunteer, to donate, to lend a hand, because they know to have a voice at the table that respects them, that wants the Violence Against Women Act reauthorized, they need to work to elect a strong leader who will put them and Iowa first. Thank you.
Thank you, Theresa. And we will move on to Kimberly Graham. There she is. Hey, Kimberly.
Hey, thanks. So yes, we absolutely need to close the boyfriend loophole, but that's definitely the floor and not the ceiling. We need to do a lot more. We need to fund extra efforts to protect trans women. There's a horrible epidemic of violence against trans women in this country. And also 4 out of 5 Native American women have experienced violence in their lifetimes. 4 out of 5 Native American women. We need to do more to protect Indigenous women in this country. One thing that would help would be allowing tribal courts to make have greater control to prosecute crimes against Indigenous people. So we need to better fund those efforts, not only to protect all women, but also to protect trans women and Indigenous women in this country. Thanks.
All right, thank you very much. Moving on to our next question, and Mike Franken will be the first to answer. This question was submitted by Jeff Shudak. Workers' rights are constantly under attack with the current administration. At a time when more Iowans need the protections a union contract can offer them, Joni Ernst and the Trump administration is making it harder than ever for workers to organize. The United States House has passed the Protect the Right to Organize, or PRO Act. Do you support this legislation?
Hi, Jeff. Thank you. Yes, I do support that. But broader than that, we need a new nation that looks at the worker versus the corporate board. The worker that has a living that they can earn and they can retire comfortably, and they have the necessary tenets of health and promise of the future, and their children. We've taken that away from a lot of people. I think about 40% of America no longer has that chance. No longer are those the rungs to ladder success that I enjoyed as a very rural, low rung of the middle class family, dad just a blue collar worker, to climb this ladder. And all of us kids did really well. We could afford college because we worked, and the wages were such that we could afford college. One begets the other one. I also support Davis-Bacon. I also support pro-labor judges. And here's the big deal. In legislation on the Hill, if you talk to Tom Harkin about this, every bit of legislation that comes through, if you can incrementally add a pro-labor passage to it, and this is not trying to win the 70-yard touchdown pass, it is grinding it out a little by little, poco a poco. This is how you change the labor dynamic in America. This is infinitely doable, but you have to have a little experience in congressional affairs, and you got to be able to work across the aisle, and you need to know where the opposing side's trade space is, because inevitably it is there. You just have to find it. And you have to be bold. No more apologizing for Democratic initiatives. We need to do better. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we'll go to Cal.
For the last 150 years or so, thousands of union members have literally given their lives to organize unions. And some of America's most prosperous times when our unions were at their zenith. Back in the 1950s, about a third of all workers were unionized. It's down to about 10% today. So now we have a wealthy country full of poor people because very few of our workers are unionized. Back in the 1950s, when about a third of our workers were unionized, that was a pretty prosperous time for America. That was when Eisenhower was president, and the top marginal tax rate was 91%, and the roof didn't collapse, things didn't cave in, the sky didn't fall. We had a fairly prosperous economy back then. That 91% top marginal tax rate was for the wealthiest of Americans, people who would be in the millions now. We need to go back to somewhere around 2/3 of that top marginal tax rate. We get closer to balancing the budget and paying off the national debt. So we need to make every opportunity available. And thanks to Patty Murray for introducing that Protect the Right to Organize Act. There's still elements out there in corporate America that would still want to discourage anybody from attempting to even organize a union. And the PRO Act that that Patty Murray introduced would give some real teeth to the National Labor Relations Act and allow people to organize without worrying about losing their jobs or being discriminated against. It would allow people to collectively bargain without worrying about losing their jobs or being demoted. And we need to pass that with all expediency. It's passed in the House. We need to do it in the Senate. Thank you.
Thank you, Cal. Theresa Greenfield, you are up next.
Jeff, thank you so much for the question. Labor unions are near and dear to my heart. You know, labor unions didn't just bring us the 40-hour work week. They built the middle class of this country, and I certainly have benefited from it, and so many of us have, and they have been under attack. I'll tell you, when I needed it most, labor unions gave me a hand up, and I'll always have their back. And I've been endorsed by 20 unions and other organizations in addition to AFL-CIO and IBEW. Look, my first husband, Rod, was a union member of IBEW. And you know, that meant he was highly trained, he made great wages, we were saving for a dignified retirement, saving to buy our first home, and on our way to our American dream. And you know, after Rod died at work, I wouldn't be here without so many of those union benefits. But it wasn't just the union benefits, it was the union family. I'll tell you, I remember moving into my first home. It was winter time. And going to bed, and the very first blizzard came through, and we were expecting 12 inches. And I thought, how am I going to shovel all of that snow with 2 little babies? You know, I woke up in the morning to a clatter, and union members were in my front yard, shoveling the driveway and shoveling our walk. And that's what union members do. We need to stop the attack on our unions, and I will vote for the PRO Act. We must allow our workers to collectively bargain for wages and benefits, for health and safety on the job. And COVID has shown us how important health and safety are on the job. Look, Senator Joni Ernst, she doesn't side with workers. She sides with her corporate PAC donors. She voted for tax cuts that have given billions to those corporations and the wealthiest in this country, setting aside hardworking families. I will not accept 1 dime of corporate PAC donations, and I'll always put hardworking families and Iowa first. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will go to Kimberly Graham.
Hey there. So yes, absolutely. Of course, I would support the PRO Act. And like other people have stated, we need to do a lot more than that. That's great. But we also need more unions, and we need stronger unions. Absolutely, no doubt. We also need to be unionizing more industries like service worker industries that are primarily employ women and Black and brown people. And they are really, really lacking in union representation. We need to reunionize our meatpacking plants. Meatpacking used to be a union job, and those unions have really, unfortunately, gone by the wayside in recent years. We also need the Workplace Democracy Act, which I encourage you to all Google that. I won't get into that because I don't have time, but take a look at the Workplace Democracy Act. It's very important. We need card check legislation so that it is dead simple to join a union. We need to pass federal laws that make it illegal to retaliate against an employee who is trying to organize or unionize. And we don't have those laws yet. We need to end so-called right-to-work laws on a federal level so that states can stop piecemealing this. And we also need to protect union pensions. And we need to protect PS, IPERS pensions and all pensions, but we have a particular problem going on with union pensions at the moment where these union members have worked very hard all their lives. And so far it appears as though our current Congress and our current GOP majority Senate isn't taking such great care of our union members in that way. And then the whole post office debacle that's going on right now. We need to stand up for our post office and make sure that our post office does not go by the wayside. By the way, the post office employs more veterans than I believe almost any other, if not any other, employing entity in this nation. And the whole idea that they would even attempt to do away with the post office that employs so many veterans is absolutely appalling. We also need to appoint people to the National Labor Relations Board who are actually pro-union. What a concept. Right now, that's not what we have. And so all of these pieces of what will strengthen unions and give us more unions and stronger unions is where we have to go. And as a union member and organizer myself, and as the proud daughter of a lifelong Pile Drivers Union member and Communication Workers of America Union member, and my son's father is an IBEW worker. By the way, my son just started as an electrician's helper at the IBEW, so he may also end up becoming a union electrician. Unions are so critically important, and I know that from my own personal life. And we need someone in the US Senate who's going to stand up for unions. Thanks.
Thank you. Next up is Eddie Mauro.
Hey, thanks, Jeff, for the question. Obviously, we all support the PRO Act. Unions have been vital to helping workers build wealth and a higher standard of living in our country, and we need strong unions again. I've been the direct beneficiary as a truck driver, working in a warehouse when I was younger, doing construction work, things I don't get a chance to talk about a lot. So supporting workers has always been important. Protecting the rights to organize, very, very important. This is not the legislation, it's about federal judges as well that have been impactful on unions. And it goes back to that question a few minutes ago about power and money. Power and money have shaped this conversation. And it's been harmful to union workers for over 50 years now. And again, that's both Democrat and Republican leadership. Here in the state of Iowa, Democrats turned their backs on unions not too long ago. So it's something we need to make sure that we're going to do something different and not the status quo. You know, Jeff, I showed up at the Capitol during a protest during collective bargaining. I'm hoping others were there, I'm not sure. And I know that some union leaders have endorsed another candidate, and that's okay. I think they made a mistake. I've had former players call me up and say, Coach, what happened? Don't they know all the work you've done for union members? Don't they know how hard that you fought for unions? I said, I think they do, but they chose how they chose. I think it's a mistake, Coach. I'm supporting you anyway. Go tell your friends. I think there's some unions out there that need to have a second look at this. Because some people in this race, while Chapter 20 was getting gutted, their businesses were paying dues from associations that were anti-union. They supported repeal of Chapter 20. They supported a right-to-work laws when we need to be fighting against them. That's a head scratcher for me. The Mauro campaign walks the walk. We're the only campaign that I know of right now, and if some of your others, you need to tell us, that's been unionized. And I've been taking that work and that fight to the State House for a long time. I look forward to taking that work to union members, whether I have your support officially or not. I'm going to win and fight for unions. Thanks for asking.
All right, thank you very much. Next up, we'll go to our next question. This one was submitted by John Holben. And there's kind of an extra part on it too, but voting by mail gives every voter a chance to participate in our election and leaves the all-important paper trail. Do you support voting by mail? And what other ways would you ensure our elections are not being interfered with? He also wanted to add if you supported fully funding the United States Postal Service so that all important services not go away. And first up is Cal Woods. And
Sure.
there you go.
Okay. First of all, with regards to the Postal Service, you can still send an envelope from Florida to Alaska for, what is it, 52 cents? It's a great bargain, and we need to support our postal worker unions, and we need to support our Postal Service. If you were to try to send that same letter via FedEx or UPS, we all know would be hundreds of times that amount of money. So in any event, we need to support our postal workers, and we need to support our post office. And the other part of your question, Scott, was what? I'm sorry.
Oh, it was about supporting vote by mail, and what other ways would you ensure our elections are not being interfered with?
Yeah, absolutely vote by mail. And with the COVID-19, obviously, that's probably going to be the method of choice. So that's a great idea. We need to have a paper ballot or some sort of hard copy backup that can't be hacked. Unfortunately, there are too many hackers, some of them in this country, some of them in Russia or China, people who want to cast some doubt on the validity of our elections. So we need to have some sort of paper backup where we can go back and look, and we need to do everything we can, spare no expense, to make sure that hackers are not allowed into our system. It's bad enough that the Russians created thousands of fake Facebook pages, and Mark Zuckerberg was either unable or unwilling to do anything about that. So we know the Russians and the Chinese and probably others are going to try to question the credibility of our election. Our own president has done that as well, but that's a whole other issue. But we need to do everything that we can to ensure the integrity of our elections, that we have backup ballots, that we have a way of tracking who voted for who. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up will be Theresa Greenfield to answer question.
All right. Thank you, John, so much for the question. You know, voting is fundamental to our democracy. And when we face tough times like right now, our voices still need to be heard. And we need to make it easy for everyone to vote. Of course, we have to put our health and safety needs first, always. But instead of postponing elections, let's just make it easier. And easier would be to vote by mail. I'm glad that our Secretary of State has taken a good first step and is sending an absentee ballot request form to every registered active voter in this state. You should be getting them soon. They come with a prepaid envelope. Fill it out, send it back, and you will receive your ballot in the mail. You know, I support sending a ballot to every active registered voter in our November elections. You know, another way that we can protect our democracy is to end political corruption, and I put a plan out to do that. It includes ending Citizens United and banning corporate PACs and ending dark PACs and making sure they can disclose their owners. And then regarding the post office, I'll tell you what, they have been delivering the mail to us for generations, and we'll be working hard to make sure they can do that for generations to come. We need to protect their frontline workers. You know, the post office keeps us connected. I talk to so many seniors who get their medications through the post office. I intend to vote by mail. And I'm delighted that the Iowa Association of Letter Carriers has endorsed my campaign. I'll always be working hard to put our hardworking families first.
All right, thank you very much, Theresa. And we will go next to Kimberly Graham.
Thanks. So yes, I support voting by mail 100%. There are some states that exclusively vote by mail, and I think that really is the way to go. It makes it so much easier, safer. I support a paper trail 1,000%. We have to have elections that are secure. And we also need to go further in regards to voting. We need to end voter ID laws. We need to stop closing polling places, especially in predominantly minority neighborhoods. And I would like to see things change where we automatically register everyone to vote in this country when they turn 18. And you don't have to vote, or you can opt out, but I think everyone should be automatically registered to vote, because that is what it means to live in the United States. It's so fundamental to our democracy that we have a vote. And if we are not automatically registering everybody, then what are we saying? That we don't think everybody should have that opportunity? We also need to teach more about voting in high school. So as kids are getting toward the voting age, they are much more aware of what it means to vote and that the importance of their vote. As far as fully funding the USPS, I think I touched on that a little bit earlier, but also it's important to remember that if the United States Postal Service ceases to exist, not only do we lose all of those jobs where, as I mentioned, so many veterans are employed, but it also harms rural Iowa because so many things are dependent on the post office in our rural communities as well. And I've also heard with some of the presidential campaigns, some of the candidates were talking about perhaps expanding postal services to include nonprofit, simple banking services. There are a lot of people in this country who cannot access a bank or cannot use a regular bank for a variety of reasons. And it would be great and would perhaps be another service that all of our post offices could offer. And our post offices are everywhere. So this would be a universal service that pretty much everybody could find a post office fairly close to them. And then we could have some truly nonprofit banking services for Americans to use with the post office. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Next up is Eddie Mauro.
Hey, John. You know, the security of our elections is tantamount to our democracy. And if there's one thing that we should have all heard loud and clear from the results of the Mueller report, it was that Russia tried to influence our elections. And what we just heard recently, even from a Republican Senate committee on the elections and security of our elections, was that Russia impacted our elections. And that should raise a red flag for all of us to make it make sure that we are not allowing outside forces to impact our elections in any way. Do I support vote by mail? Absolutely. I think we should figure out ways that we can expand that. In fact, I support that so much we created our own site. Go check it out, voteearlyiowa.org. Where we're helping all voters in Iowa to vote early, both in June, and we'll do the same thing in November because we have a lot of big things going on. We also need to think about the resources that are necessary from the federal level to combat artificial intelligence, AI, deep fakes that are being used, whether that be on social media or other ways that can mislead and con and trick voters. We talk about cyber warfare altogether, whether that be China or Russia, any other nefarious actors. John, on top of that, we need to end political corruption that we see just in DC within the establishment. We need to tell them to stay out of our elections. Very, very important. You see, we have the establishment in our own party that's trying to weigh in heavily on this election. And along with that weighment comes big oil money, comes pharmaceutical money, comes Wall Street money, all trying to influence our primary election here in June. And that's, again, why this primary has such a serious consequence. The Dem establishment is trying to get somebody that they can control. And that's not me. So we need to make sure we're looking long and hard about how do we want to make sure we're electing the right person that could go out and lead and push back and stand with Iowans first and foremost, a people senator fighting for your families, for their education, their income, their health care, their climate and environment, and for the security of their vote in this democracy. Thanks, John, for asking.
Thank you very much, Eddie. And the next candidate to answer the question is Mike Franken.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, John. So there's two types of intelligence. It's hard intelligence and soft intelligence. Just so we know who we're up against here, when the president is presented hard intelligence, the power of the building, demand going up, experts being called from the hinterlands, computer scientists, social scientists, et cetera, to work for President Putin. This is called hard intelligence. Mr. President, they're getting ready to do the same thing this year as in last election. Now, he probably will, once again, disregard this and call it fake news, but it's not. Matter of fact, he gets rid of the people that tell him that. I've had a security clearance since 1978, still have one. So I'll tell you that this is a true thing. This is a problem. And the party that tries to denude us of postal elections has much more fundamental problems. So we'll just walk by that and ensure that the Postal Service stays funded and this becomes a viable means of voting. And I would urge the majority of Americans to do via postal. You can go to our website and get a ballot request form. You know, we don't want to become like Wisconsin, what they do to their primary voters. We need to ensure that everyone has an opportunity to do this, especially during this COVID opportunity, but for this COVID situation. But more importantly, into perpetuity. This is a viable thing. And what Cal said about package delivery is true for the Postal Service. We really need to maintain that because that's the essence of rural America for deliveries. I have fond memories of running to the mailbox, racing my sisters and barefoot in the snow even to see who was the one to get the mail. This is an institution in America that we need to preserve. All right, so go back. Let's go also back to that last union question, if I can spare a moment. We work to talk about union leaders' support, but what we need to do as a Democratic Party is get the rank and file union members behind us. We haven't done that well. We've been neglectful of them, and including the post office, the postal workers. We need to be the party that takes them. Okay, not takes them because we're the viable party of the future, and we need to win on substance. That's all.
All right, thank you very much. Next up, we're going to our next question. This question was submitted by Marianne Kerr. The American Association of University Women, or AAUW, addresses the issue of pay equity as one of their main focuses. Through research, AAUW has learned that the continued pay gap exists in the workforce, with women earning roughly 82% of men's earnings. Women are seeking higher education at a greater rate and holding about 2/3 of outstanding student debt in America. Over a lifetime, women earn less in Social Security and pensions. Overall, retirement for women is 70% of that of men. As senator, would you work to help equalize earnings and reduce the gender pay gap for equal work? And we will start with Theresa Greenfield.
All right. Well, thank you, Marianne, for that question and participating in today's forum. It's great to have you come out. Look, it is time that we make equal pay a reality. All workers must receive equal pay for equal work, period. You know, growing up on the Greenfield farm, one of my favorite jobs was helping my dad with his crop dusting business. It absolutely was delightful to watch him soar through the sky. And it made me dream and think that I could be anything. And I could, and I have been, and we need to dream like that. But you know, one farmer that I was working with refused to do business with me because I was a girl. And my dad said that there's no boy jobs and there's no girl jobs. There's just jobs that need to get done. Look, Iowa has one of the biggest gender pay gaps. Women make 77 cents on the dollar. We're in the bottom 1/5 of our country when it comes to pay equity. I support the Paycheck Fairness Act, and I want to make sure that big companies are held accountable and that they pay women on an equal rate as what they pay men. But let's not just stop there. Heck no. Let's raise the minimum wage, raise wages for all Iowans. No one can save for a dignified retirement and provide for their families or have American dream at $7.25 an hour. We have to move up the minimum wage to $15 an hour. And then we have to invest in education. So absolutely everybody has the opportunity to get a living wage job or start their own businesses. Heck, more people should become apprenticeships like my first husband did and earn while they learn. I'll be focused on helping make sure that we achieve equal pay in this country. Thank you.
Thank you, Theresa. And Kimberly Graham is up next.
Thanks. There's so much to say here. The first is that the National Organization for Women is an organization that for 40 years or something more than that, maybe 60 years. I don't know the exact date of their founding, but they've been working for these issues for a long, long time, including for the Equal Rights Amendment. And our campaign was endorsed by the National Organization for Women this week, and I'm very proud about that. So there's a lot of different issues here. The first, I agree with Theresa 100%. We need to raise the minimum wage, the federal minimum wage. $7.25 an hour is a joke. It is nothing but an insulting joke to people who work hard in this country for close to that wage or at that wage. When I was doing research on this issue, the next lowest wage I could find across developed nations was for a few little pieces of Canada, not all of Canada, mind you, but for a few little pockets of Canada, for a few particular jobs, they're paying $10 and I think it was 36 an hour or something like that. Well, we are by far the lowest federal minimum wage in the developed world, like by far, it's not even close. And that is absolutely appalling. When it was started, it was supposed to support a mom and a dad and a baby on one person working for minimum wage. That's how it was discussed and debated in Congress. It's not even close to that now. So we need to go up to 15 an hour and index that to inflation so it continues to rise. That will help bring some women at least a little bit further out of poverty, because tell you what, it's women who are disproportionately doing those low wage jobs. So this would increase their pay. We also need to work on the whole the whole issue of elder women living in poverty. None of our elders in a moral and wealthy nation should be living in poverty. And since women still outlive men, we have women living in poverty and in deeper poverty much longer. And we can stop that in several ways. We need to think about paying women and paying people who are caregivers. If somebody is going to be staying at home caring for an elder, for example, in their home, why don't we think about paying them instead of paying a nursing home? That could go a long way. Why don't we give them credits for Social Security? A lot of women have taken time out of the workforce to care for children or elders, and that hurts them when they go to retire. If we gave women credits towards Social Security payments for the months or years they were out of the workforce and they were caring for children or elders, that would help a lot to alleviate some of that poverty in the elder years. Thanks.
Thank you. Next up is Eddie Mauro.
Hey, thanks, Mary Ann. You know, when my twins were born, I told my son and my daughter both that no matter what you wanted to do, that the world would be there for you. And I expected them to both be treated equally. They both went out and did the work they needed to do, that they would both be able to be successful in this world. We know that that hasn't been able to be the case because of what's been happening with the pay inequity we've had in this country for far too long. And I support equal pay for equal work. Before I get into that part I want to tell you about Social Security, though. So I think we need to go back and look at all of the women that are currently on Social Security and make sure that we give them a bump, a percentage bump, to make up for the inequity that's been going on for far too long. I'm looking forward to talking about legislation that would bring that about for women. But back to equal pay for equal work. See, I said a lot throughout this day that I've been walking the walk. I employ nearly 70 people across this country. 80% of them are women that are in leadership roles in my company. 85% of them women all together. And they're making equal pay for equal work to their male counterparts. And we're doing the same thing in our campaign. Well, again, we got the most diverse campaign of any in this state, and I think of any in this country, I challenge. And we're paying equally to everybody for their work. We have women leaders in our campaign as well. And we just can't talk about the women inequities. We got to talk about the minority impact for minority women, African-American women, Latino women that are even further behind that we need to make up for. And we got to talk succinctly about paid family leave. Again, another place where I've walked the walk for a very long time, making sure that all of my employees know that they have the ability to go take care of their aging parents or their children if they need to. So I'm uniquely prepared to talk about this issue because it's been intentionally done on my end. I'm prepared to have this fight because I've done it. And I'm looking forward to continue to do it for women across this country, women like my daughter.
Thank you very much, Eddie. Next, we will go to Mike Franken.
Hi, everyone. Mary Ann. So I was put on a team one time to bring the preeminence of women up on the continent of Africa at the behest of State Department and DOD and USAID and a few others. So our plan was to find women who had the underpinnings to learn from the very base level, highly technical aspects of communication, from Wi-Fi to satellite communication, cryptology, and everything in between, and teach them more. Give them an opportunity in the United States. Send them back on their countries of origin and watch them go. And this has been wildly successful by DOD. And now those women are parts of cabinet members. So in America here, back in the 80s, when I'm going to grad school at the College of Physics, there wasn't a single woman in my curriculum. not a single one. Why? Because the education processes in the United States, for some reason, we probably all know, I won't say what those are, but we sidetracked women from those technical needs. In the future, technology is going to be very much part of us. So we need to concentrate on from a gender-free perspective and ensuring everybody has that opportunity. In the meantime, I agree with Eddie Mauro that we need to look at Social Security and brace up the women's percentage because they were given a bad deal in the past. I agree with Kimberly, and I agree with Cal, and I agree with Theresa. Everybody, we're 100% on board with this. But in the end, we need to make sure that women from an education perspective and at the very root level have the same opportunity as men, and society doesn't push them aside. They need to do this. And the larger thing is the opportunities of women once they become professionals. Rural healthcare is a great thing to introduce. At $11 an hour or so for a child care provider in rural America, that's ridiculous. They ought to be paid what we pay a school teacher, which ought to be more as well. We need to do better and ensure those child care providers provide a decent living and something better than a frugal elegance, as the original legislation said, and have a future that's hugely progressive. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. And we will go next to Cal Woods.
Thank you, Scott. You know, part of the reason that women continue to make less than men is because there's a key question. When somebody's offered a job, the employer asks for your salary history. And if the woman started out making less than a male doing that same job, that's going to continue if they're forced to give their salary history. I would say make that question in a job interview one of several that's illegal for them to ask, so that any applicant, man or woman, is given a compensation based on their experience, their talent, and their skills, and not what they may have been paid in a previous job. So yes, I would support the Paycheck Fairness Act, which would also allow employees to be free from that ban that says you can't discuss your salary or your income with fellow employees. And I would go a step further. Right now, I would say if you're a private business and you want to do business with the federal government, like every public employee, whether it's in the military, a police officer, a school teacher, a football coach, any government employee at the federal, state, local level, your salary, your income is public information. I'd say if you want to, say a defense contractor or anybody who wants to do business with the federal government, you have to be able to prove and document by releasing the salaries, the income of those folks who work for your company, so we can make sure that people are getting equal pay for equal work. Thank you.
Thank you. And that leads us into our next question, which was submitted by Lisa Lima. And Kimberly Graham will be the first one to answer that. What is your position on how to fix America's broken healthcare system? Do you support a Medicare for all single payer system?
Hi, Lisa. Yes, I'm the only candidate running for this U.S. Senate seat who unequivocally supports a universal single payer or Medicare for all system. And here's why. In my opinion, healthcare should be a fundamental human right in a moral and wealthy nation. And then we have to ask the question, well, what is a human right? Is it something that should be marketed and bought and sold? Is it something you have to pay for? Is a human right something that if you have more money, you can get a better human right? I think no. And if we say no, that's not the case, then we have to make our healthcare system one that is universal single payer, because that is the most financially smart. It is the least expensive. It is way less expensive than what we are doing now, all in. And it is also the most just, because absolutely everyone has healthcare as a fundamental human right because they live in the United States of America, and not because they can afford a $5,000 deductible, and not because they can afford a $10,000 deductible or a $2,000 a month insurance premium. So we have to get to the place, and I think we're getting there pretty fast. And sadly, this pandemic, I think, is getting us there even faster. I mean, I'm glad we're getting there faster. I'm really sorry for the reason why. But we have to get to the place where we all accept that healthcare should be a fundamental human right. And then from there, we just have to go about the how and work through the details of how fast can we get there. And when we get there, what's exactly going to look like. There is some Medicare for All legislation that has been written and of course isn't being heard or even voted on in the United States Senate. And so we have to look at that. I recently was reading an article from The Guardian that flabbergasted me so much I printed it out. And one of the things that stood out to me was that an emergency room physician is interviewed in here about how he is in favor, and most doctors and nurses he knows are in favor of a universal single payer system. There's a statistic in here that more Americans are afraid of paying for healthcare if they get ill than are afraid of getting ill. 40% of Americans are more afraid of the bill. 33% of Americans are afraid of getting seriously ill. That is absolutely pathetic. And we can do so much better in the wealthiest nation on earth. And I will stand up and fight for a universal single payer system in the United States Senate. Thanks.
Thank you. Next up, we will go to Eddie Mauro.
Hey, thanks, Lisa, for the question. So I believe that healthcare should be available for everybody. I do think it's a human right, one that needs to be there just for justice sake. I think one of the differences for me is that it doesn't make a difference how we get to that goal, whether that's single payer or multi-payer, it doesn't make a difference. We need to make sure we hit the goal. And that's something I've done, Lisa. Again, I keep talking about how I've been walking the walk. I went up to the state legislature and worked on a piece of mental health legislation where I knew what I wanted. I knew what the goal was, that the ultimate objective was, and I knew how I wanted to get there, but somebody else had another idea because there is another side. And they came back with their idea. And we had to go figure out how we can make sure we reach the goal, but also work with other people. And that's the only way we're going to make sure that we get health care for everybody in this country done. And I'm also listening, Lisa. I'm listening to union members in particular who have come up to me and said, hey, Eddie, single payer sounds really cool, but man, we have really busted our butt and given away a lot of salary in order to get this great benefit that's called our health care. And it'd be foolish of us not to listen, not to acknowledge that, not to take that into consideration when we're trying to figure out how do we make sure that every American has health care, that it's affordable, it's accessible for everybody. And while we're talking about health care, we need to make sure we're also talking about all the other intricacies that go along with that. I employ nearly 70 people across the country. I provide their health care insurance. It is very expensive. And it's been going up since I started in 2000 till today. And not just the ACA. And there's other things that play, power and money, the cost of care itself, pharmaceutical costs, now more advertising, more competition. There's so many other things that are at play that we need to make sure we're talking about. And we better think about our infrastructure, how we're going to build that out, how we're going to make sure we have enough healthcare professionals to take care of everybody, and we're going to need that in the future as we get an older and older population. There's a lot of things at play. We need the right kind of leader that can lead us and make sure we got eyes on the ball on all of those that are juggling, so we can make sure we reach the ultimate goal: healthcare, quality, accessible, affordable for every single American in this country. Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you, Eddie. We will go next to Mike Franken.
Hi, everybody. Thanks, Lisa. So my end state is the type of healthcare you had in the military. So for almost 40 years, preventive healthcare, mental, physical, even dental, fully covered. You walk in, it's done. Available for your family as well for a small fee, and this carries with you in retirement. It's a good thing. That should be a God-given right for every American, cradle to grave, including those who are here on various immigration waivers or visas, etc. Make it happen. America can indeed afford this. How to get there? That's the question. That's where we differ. My sense is, let's fix the Affordable Care Act. It had a lot of shortcomings. These are well documented. Fix the shortcomings and iteratively improve it. Put Medicare on the exchange. We may want to consider moving the age down to say 60, and ultimately work our way to a national healthcare system. Having lived overseas, having had operations overseas, I'll tell you, we do not have the corner on good healthcare in America. Not even close. Whoops. We need to do better. We need to address mental health care in this country and dental care, all of which are not what they should be in a country of our value. We also should build more community health care centers. These things are wildly successful. That's a Tom Harkin initiative, and we should put one in every major town. And here's the other thing. When the Affordable Health Care Act gets fully implemented, you then have a business plan where an aspiring business person could open a clinic knowing that everybody who comes in will get paid, will be paid, we'll have a payer system, and that person will ultimately be paid. That's the problem with our system. It fails the business plan approach because too many people are uninsured. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. We will move on to Cal Woods.
Thank you, Scott. You know, back in 2009 and 2010, Democrats controlled the White House, the House, and the Senate, and we still took 2 years to come up with the Affordable Care Act, and it still provided a big sloppy wet kiss to the insurance industry to the tune of about $500 billion a year. Right now, we have a healthcare system that works extremely well for insurance companies and pharmaceutical companies because about 20 cents of our healthcare dollar goes to insurance companies because they have to hire salespeople and pay for marketing and advertising and CEO salaries. David Wickman, the CEO at United Healthcare, made $18 million in 2018. And of course, if it's a private for-profit health insurance company, the shareholders want a return on their investment as well. So about 20 cents of our healthcare dollar now goes to insurance companies. Another 30 cents of our healthcare dollar goes to administrative costs, the amount that we pay for the billing clerks to do the red tape shuffle with the doctors and the nurses and the insurance companies try to justify charges. I had lunch with a retired physician the other day, and she told me when she was in practice on some days, she would spend nearly half of her day filling out paperwork to justify charges to the insurance company. It's unconscionable. Another 12 cents of our healthcare dollar goes to the amount that we overpay for prescription drugs. We don't have to do that. I happen to be a veteran and I get wonderful health care at the VA. Our VA negotiates lower drug costs with the pharmaceutical companies. There's no reason that Medicare or public option can't do the same thing and save another 12 cents of our healthcare dollar. So right now, about 62 cents of our healthcare dollar goes to insurance companies, administrative costs, and the high price that we pay compared to other developed nations for prescription drugs. 62 cents before we ever get to the doctors and nurses, and please don't forget the CNAs, the folks who actually take care of us when we get sick or hurt. I like a public option. We didn't have to outlaw the horse and buggy. We just found more efficient ways to get around. And likewise, we don't have to outlaw private health insurance or say you can't compete with Medicare. We outcompete them because with a public option, you won't have to pay marketing costs. You won't have to pay advertising costs. Not all, but most of the administrative costs will go away. There's no shareholders expecting a profit or return on their investment, and there's no CEO that's getting $18 million a year. So if we do that, we can eliminate, probably save somewhere around $600 to $700 billion a year. We can have more beds for mental health clinics. We can have more training to have more doctors and nurses to bring down the cost of healthcare. We can do all the things. The people who are now uninsured or underinsured, 20-some million Americans, we can provide health care for those folks if we eliminate the costs that we're now wasting, about 62 cents on the dollar for pharmaceutical, the amount to overpay for pharmaceuticals, administrative costs, and insurance companies. And we can do that.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Cal. We will move on next to Theresa Greenfield.
All right. Thanks for coming out tonight, Lisa, and thanks for the great question. You know, Iowans, we stick together. We take care of one another like we've done in our hometowns, like happened when I grew up. And I believe healthcare is a right for all of us. You know, I kicked off my Hear It from the Heartland tour at the Boone County Hospital. And I did it because it's an independent hospital. It was great to sit down and visit with them about the needs of their community. They're a hospital that still has a labor and delivery unit. That is awesome. But you know what? They are worried that if they lose their Medicaid expansion, that they won't be able to keep their lights on. It has been a lifeline for them. Of course, we know as we travel the state and talk to folks, many people are driving 20 and 30 minutes or more to get the health care they need, to get groceries, to go to their faith communities. And I'm worried again, if those rural hospitals close, they could be driving 60 miles, or worse yet, not get the health care they need. Look, healthcare has been the #1 concern I have heard since I kicked off this campaign last June. People are concerned about the high costs, about losing coverage, about keeping their rural hospitals and services, and of course, their prescription drugs. Iowans are being gouged by the pharmaceutical companies for these outrageous drug prices. I support strengthening the Affordable Care Act, enhancing it. I support creating a public option. Competition and leveling the playing field is good, but we need an option so absolutely every Iowan and every American can get the coverage they need. We have to let Medicare negotiate for those prescription drug prices. And of course, we know why Joni Ernst does not support Medicare negotiating. She takes dollars, big pharma PAC dollars, to support her campaign and puts their interests in front of Iowans. Look, Senator Joni Ernst, she voted to take your health care away, to take away your protections and gut your protections for pre-existing conditions, to kick your kids off your health care, and to end the Medicaid expansion that has been a lifeline for rural hospitals. I will work to make sure that we have health care for every Iowan and every American, and I'm running to put Iowa first. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Theresa. And we are on to our last question of the evening. We will do this before closing statements. Eddie Mauro will be the first candidate to answer this, and this was submitted by myself, Scott Pottawattamie. Joni Ernst backed the Trump tax cuts that have failed to deliver on her promise of helping average Americans. In fact, more than 60% of the tax savings went to people in the top 20% of the income ladder. The measure also slashed the corporate tax rate by 40%. What is your plan to reverse those effects and help small businesses and workers instead of large corporations?
Yeah, Scott, thanks for the question. Thanks for organizing this again, by the way. I want to take a step further. 83% of the benefit of that tax bill went to the wealthiest 1% of Americans. And ever since then, Joni Ernst and the Republicans have been threatening Social Security and Medicare, which is kind of a head scratcher for us. The tax system that is corporations not paying their fair share. They haven't done it for a long time. Now look, I pay taxes in many states, and I want to make sure that, and I got to tell you, it would be easy for me to just go open up an office in Bermuda or in Ireland, and I wouldn't pay any taxes. And we need to end that. We need to make sure that every corporation that's doing business in this country, every corporation that has employees that's selling goods and services in this country is paying its fair share of taxes, just like I do to each state for the business I do in them. So we got to close those kind of loopholes that are out there. We got to close all the other loopholes that are out there. So the answer for me is, it starts with making sure that we are going to take a fresh look at that tax bill to make sure we have a real fair tax system that has the type of mechanisms in play so that the folks at the top are paying their fair share. All goes back to corporate power and money in government, though, right? A lot of this has a recurring theme because those folks are out there able to shape through lobby money, through special interest money, through legislative PAC money, the ability to help shape those laws. And again, that's Republicans and Democrats alike. And we're seeing that in our farm bill that also favors corporations. Meat packers are getting all the benefits, but our farmers are getting screwed at the detriment of workers and our union brothers and sisters and siblings who are being left behind because of an unfair tax system. This didn't just start with Trump, by the way, or with Ernst. We need to make sure we have the right leaders in place that can take us and be transformative and intentional to reach out to all people, and especially people left behind. And COVID has expanded this and magnified this even more. You see, what we should have been doing over the last 10 years is putting money away to make sure we had money for a rainy day fund, to make sure we had enough resources. We were prepared for this pandemic, and we weren't. And that's because we were spending too much time trying to shape and bend rules to favor the rich, rather than making sure we're looking out how we're going to protect the most vulnerable in our communities. So there's a lot of layers in this. We got to talk about leadership patch. We got to talk about what's going on in both parties. If we don't do that, Wall Street will continue to influence our tax system. Fossil fuel industry will continue to influence our tax system. Pharmaceuticals will continue to impact our tax system, and hardworking Iowans will continue to be left behind.
Thank you very much, Eddie. And we will move on to Mike Franken.
Hi, everyone. So revenue collection is a large operation in the federal government, any kind of government. You've got to have funds. It's got to be done fairly, it's got to be done cleanly, and it's got to be transparent. We fail on all those counts. The tax code that we have sharply favors the wealthy and those who are seated by special interest. There are special provisions in the tax code that are idealized for specific entities. It's unfair. If the common citizen knew about all these things, they would be aghast. Let's take, for instance, the latest outrage, the net operating loss in the most recent CARE bill. So 80% of the people who are benefited by that net operating loss legislation, on average, make over $1 million, and they will get a tax break, a back tax of $1.6 million. That's just one little snippet of a tax inequity, which we smile and act like we're all good with that. We're not good with that. That's why the third leg of my campaign is the greed and special interest that's force-fed by Wall Street. It's fundamentally wrong. It's also why I believe it's 3% of this CARE Act goes to small businesses with less, only 3% goes to small businesses who have incomes less than $100,000. It's fundamentally wrong. We also need to look at stuff like estate taxes and why our tax code is idealized for things like real estate developers. Shocking that that's what the president would be. But also for estate tax. We need to look at estate tax and stop with the gimmicks so that that there are provisions that if you hold on to assets for an extended period of time, like farmers or small business would be, you would then get a break, but not these instantaneous turnover gimmicks that we use to hide assets in our tax code. We need a fundamental overhaul, a clean sheet approach, and it has to be fair. There's many countries that do this much better than we do. We've got better programs. We need strength and commitment to do this. Happy to get signed on to do it. Thanks.
Thank you. We will go next to Cal Wood.
Joni Ernst voted for the Trump tax cut of 2017. Our wonderful Secretary of the Treasury, Steve Mnuchin, said it'll stimulate the economy so much that it'll pay for itself and it'll start to pay down the national debt. They've been telling us this lie every time they make a pitch for tax cuts since the 1980s, and all we do is add on to the national debt. It's unconscionable that we're thinking about passing that $23 trillion, probably $24 trillion national debt to the kids and grandkids of the next generation. It's unconscionable that we're even thinking about that. So how do we address it? Well, let's go back to the top marginal tax rate that we had, just 2/3 of the top marginal tax rate that we had under Dwight Eisenhower back in the 1950s. The sky didn't fall, the economy didn't collapse, things were cooking along pretty well. Let's also go back to the top capital gains tax rate. That's money that you get from making a profit, like Warren Buffett, who's mentioned many times how his administrative assistant pays a higher tax rate, even though she makes maybe $70,000, $80,000 a year, and he makes billions. He's in a lower tax bracket than his administrative assistant, and he's pointed this out many times. If we go back to the top capital gains tax rate that we had under Nixon and Ford in the 60s and 70s, we can get closer to balancing the budget and have an equitable tax code, and that we're not passing on trillions of debt to the next generation. It's unfair, it's not right, it's shameful, and we can do that if we have the political will to send people to Washington who will fight for an equitable tax code, and I will.
Thank you very much, Cal. Next up is Theresa Greenfield.
All right, well, thanks, Scott, for the question, and of course, thanks for leading this forum tonight. You and Jill and so many of us, I'm sure, put a lot of work into it. Thank you so much. Look, Iowa is a state of small towns and small businesses. It is a state of hardworking folks and hardworking families. And you know what? Washington is not working for them, not working for us. And I believe the big corporations and the wealthiest amongst us should pay their fair share. You know, in the Senate, I will end those wasteful handouts. I'll work for a tax code that benefits our hardworking families and our small businesses across the state. It's been really fun being out on the campaign trail. I've had the chance to meet so many folks and visit their small businesses on main streets and of course in big towns too. And they want the tax code to be fair for them. They want the benefits that we've given the largest corporations. And yet that's not what's happened. Look, we need to invest in our small businesses and our workers. And that investment starts with skills training, opportunities to go to college and get the skills you need to earn a living wage job and start your own small business. It starts with taking some of those tax dollars and investing in capital to grow those small businesses throughout our country and particularly in our rural areas. And we need an infrastructure plan, one that fixes our bridges. We're 50th in the nation in bridge suitability here in Iowa, but also brings broadband to every single home. And we can do that if we choose the right way to invest our tax dollars. Look, Joni Ernst, she told us she was going to be different, right, and independent and make them squeal. But she voted for a tax bill that has increased our debt by $2 trillion, benefiting the billionaires and the wealthiest and the largest corporations, so many of them who have funded her campaign with their corporate PAC donations. I'll be working hard to put Iowa first, put our hardworking families first, and put our small businesses first. Thank you.
Thank you, Theresa. And we will go next to Kimberly Graham.
Thanks. Well, one thing that some people don't know when I've discussed the 2017 tax law with them is that the cuts for the very wealthy, the cuts for corporations in that tax bill were made permanent. And what Senator Ernst doesn't talk about when she likes to brag about how that was a tax cut for everyone is she doesn't talk about the fact that buried in that bill was a provision that says that in 2027, 7 years from now, all of the individual tax cuts automatically expire. Gotcha. So what we got was a massive corporate giveaway that is permanent until we do other legislation to repeal it and get rid of it. And we have so-called middle-class tax cuts that auto-magically expire in 2027. How interesting and convenient, isn't it? So we have to stop that. We have to stop making our tax reform basically dressed up giveaways to people that are already wealthy and that do not need any help. We have got to stop investing in making the wealthy wealthier, and we have to start investing in lifting up all of us, especially lower and middle income Iowans and Americans. We have to do things like stop business owners that can deduct 20% of their pass-through income. That is something that you're not going to see a mom and pop business doing, probably deducting 20% of their income as pass-through. They're not even going to know how to do that. And so, you know, we're talking the difference between a small business nominally, what our government sometimes calls small business, are businesses that are multi-million-dollar businesses. Not what I think of when I think of a small business, which is, you know, the corner sundry on the square in Indianola where I raised my son. That's a small business. And if we appropriately tax the very wealthy in this country, we will have the money. Oh, and if we stop subsidizing Amazon and Walmart and Exxon, we will have the money to actually provide some help and subsidies and support to our micro businesses, our businesses on our town squares, in our rural areas and our urban areas, so that they can afford to pay a $15 an hour minimum wage. Because when we enable those small businesses to do that by investing in them, that's going to be an upward spiral. And it's going to grow those little economies in those small towns. And it's going to be like throwing a rock in a pond. We're going to have positive ripples spin out from that investment being made in truly small businesses. Thanks.
All right, thank you. And we will start with closing comments. Mike Franken.
Well, thanks for this opportunity, and thanks for the western side of the state to step up and have this platform on a Sunday afternoon, Sunday evening. I'm proud to be part of that western side of the state, and we're not going to win this state unless we do better in the non-large urban areas. So the Sioux cities, the Mason cities, we're working our way around down to Shenandoah and Council Bluffs. Absolutely. We need to speak with those individuals we know who do not like this administration, but haven't looked in the mirror and decided, you know what, I'm a Democrat, or I'm going to vote Democrat. We need to get them to register, and we need to get them to sign up. And this needs to be a blue wave going through this state. This election's a big one. Who wins this will ultimately, potentially, be the senior senator from the state of Iowa. This is a big deal. And ultimately run the Iowa Democratic Party, be the person who is like Tom Harkin and is the standard bearer of all goodness to bring Iowa to the next dimension. Not the Iowa that we had before the pandemic, but the new America plan. Rebuild our infrastructure, improve our education, certainly address healthcare so that it becomes a God-given right for everyone. And let's work to bring our farmers so that they have a profit that's not based on bad trade policies and just the farm bill. We can do this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. And next up is Cal Woods.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. Thanks to everyone for hosting, and thanks for everyone for participating today. I appreciate that. For just a second here, let's be brutally honest. Joni Ernst won her race in 2014 primarily on the strength of Iowa's rural communities and rural counties. And the truth is, she's been devastating to those rural economies. We have more hogs and lower income, lower revenue in many rural counties in Iowa because of Trump policies, because of the trade tariffs. We have about 1 in 4 hogs in America, and of course Iowa's the biggest hog producer. About 1 in 4 is owned by the Chinese. The Chinese own Smithfield Foods Packing. The Chinese own more than 400 farms, tens of thousands of acres, and about 18 million hogs. So what we have in too many cases, hog farm owners have become hired hands on their own farms, working for the people, the corporations, and in many cases, Smithfield and the Chinese, they become hired hands on their own farms. They feed the hogs. They take out millions of loans to build the confinements. And then when they deliver the hogs to market, then they get paid by the owners. We need to ban foreign ownership of any packing plant, of any hogs in America. That's a good start to get the revenue opportunities back in the hands of Iowa farms and rural communities, Iowa farmers. Joni Ernst was terrible on the renewable fuel standard, again, that I'd mentioned earlier, that gave the refineries waivers and killed demand for corn, about 1.4 billion bushels of corn. That was devastating to corn prices and therefore farmers in rural communities. The tariffs, the ill-advised, ill-thought-out, poorly executed trade tariffs that Joni Ernst was apparently not willing to take on the Trump administration and fight for, has hurt ag exports to China alone about $10 billion. And when some of those markets are gone, we may or may not get them back. Joni Ernst has seemed more interested in appeasing Donald Trump's fantasies of greatness than fighting for Iowa farmers. So we need to elect someone who will fight for Iowa's farmers, our rural communities, and I will. Thank you all for hosting this forum today. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cal. We will go on next to Theresa Greenfield.
All right, well, thank you so much, everyone. This has been a great forum, good questions. I appreciate the opportunity to join you tonight, so thank you for hosting it. And I gotta tell you, we aren't gonna get action on the things that we care the most about, whether it's healthcare or restoring our rural economy, getting climate action, unless we win this seat in the fall. And I'll tell you what, I am the strongest candidate here to defeat Senator Joni Ernst, and we can win. I'm a businesswoman. I understand the difficult times our small businesses are facing right now. Their doors are closed, and I can help open those doors as their next senator. I'm a mother of 4, and I understand the tough decisions women are making and families are making at their kitchen tables right now, trying to balance their budgets and stretch a dollar, pay the rent and put milk in the refrigerator. And as a farm kid, I grew up appreciating hard work. We've got tough times in front of us right now, but we can come together and take care of one another. Look, I'm running to put Iowa first, to put hardworking families first, and I'm thrilled with the strong grassroots team that we have built with over 15,000 contributions from Iowans from all 99 counties, 20 unions and organizations, and most recently the AFL-CIO have endorsed our campaign. And we're going to keep working hard to build that strong grassroots team to defeat Senator Joni Ernst in November. Look, I've got the grit and the resolve and the resiliency to go fight this fight in every county, every township, for every single vote. So I'm going to leave you with this thought. You know, after my first husband died and I got back on my feet, not by myself, I got my first job and it was for $8 an hour. The other thing I got back was my dignity. And absolutely everybody in this state and in this country wants the dignity of providing for their families. And I will take their fight with me in my heart as our next senator. And I can't do it alone. So I want to ask if you'll join my campaign. Go sign up, volunteer, help us out. Help us win this fight. Because here's my promise to you. I'll never forget who I am, where I'm from, and who I'm fighting for. And that's to put Iowa first. So thanks for letting me come out tonight.
Thank you very much, Theresa. And we will go to Kimberly Graham.
Well, thank you everyone for being here tonight. I really appreciate the opportunity to be able to reach so many more people in advance of our, I would say June 2nd voting, but vote now. You can vote now by mail. So please do get your absentee ballot request form in, get your ballot, and get your ballot sent in. So I'd like to close with talking a little bit more about healthcare, because I think that there's so many important issues, and the climate crisis is my second most important issue. We've got to take aggressive, bold action on that. But I want to talk about healthcare, and I want to talk about some statistics that we should think about when we talk about what kind of healthcare system we want. 42% of American cancer patients spend through their life savings within 2 years of a diagnosis in the wealthiest nation on earth. We have an epidemic of 26-year-olds dying in this country from rationing insulin. Why 26-year-olds? Because that's when they come off of their parents' medical plan. And so many of our 26-year-olds are working in gig economies and at jobs that don't provide any medical insurance, and they can't afford it. We shouldn't have even one person dying in the wealthiest nation on earth because they can't afford insulin, a cheap drug that I guess Congress has decided it's just okay if pharmaceutical companies gouge people in this country. Why do they get away with it? Maybe because too many of our politicians are bought by pharmaceutical lobbyists. It's probably a lot to that. We also have to think about this. Having a universal single-payer healthcare system would be great for our economy, great for entrepreneurship, great for those small businesses on our rural town squares, because they would no longer have to worry about how they're going to pay for their family's insurance or how they're going to pay their employees' insurance. People could work anywhere because they would have insurance no matter what. With millions of people losing their jobs in this pandemic, we have now seen the problem with tying your health insurance to your job. And union jobs are fantastic. As I told you before, my whole family's union workers. I've been a union worker. My son's father is a union worker. But if you lose your good union job, what happens then? Or what happens to your child when they turn 26? We have to take care of everyone. We are losing companies to Canada. Why Canada? Because they're going across the northern border where their company doesn't have to worry about reevaluating insurance plans and paying a higher and higher cost every single year for insurance. I've been fighting for Iowans for 20 years, standing up and fighting for Iowans. Go to KimberlyForIowa.com, join our movement. I'm going to continue to fight for Iowans in the United States Senate, and I appreciate your support. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Kimberly. We will go next to Eddie Mauro.
Hey, Scott, thanks so much for putting this on today, and Jill, for your good work. Congratulations, Jill, on your big win last November. And we're all here today because we share one thing in common. We're all ready to see the devastation coming from Joni Ernst's time in the U.S. Senate end. And at this moment, requiring the greatest leadership of the millennium, we're burdened with the weakest leader in the history of our country. And who's been at his side every step of the way? Joni Ernst. The administration lacked the preparedness to handle this crisis. Is one of my biggest fears. It has lacked the honesty and transparency required to lead us in any way. It lacks the care and empathy Iowans and Americans yearn for. So this election is a referendum on leadership, and we need to elect the right type of leader if we have any chance of ousting Ernst. We need a leader who can take the tough questions, who reaches out to voters all across Iowa, not just big donors, and who's prepared to stand up and fight for all those who are being left behind. I'm a different kind of candidate who will bring an outsider's energy and a unique leadership skill set to the United States Senate. I've walked the walk. My experience in Iowa as a teacher and a coach, a business leader, a community advocate is deeper than any other. I've also done work in Africa, Central America, and around this country. But most importantly, I've done the work right here in Iowa. So I don't just talk about improving schools, hospitals, and mental health services, protecting Medicare and Social Security for seniors. I don't just talk about creating a fair economy that includes small business owners and workers and a farm bill that truly meets the needs of the family farmer first. I've been fighting for you already. And nobody in this field has been grounded in the community like I have. Right now, Iowans need a voice in the United States Senate who understands you. I hear you when you say we lack broadband in our communities. I hear you when you say our schools are crumbling. I hear you when you say healthcare and mental health services are not acceptable. I hear you when you say daycare is not accessible. I hear you when you say wages are being depressed. Our rights are being taken away. I hear you when you say the talent is leaving our communities. I hear you when you say you want to help feed America, but need to make a living to do so. And I hear you when you say you want to organize and get the fair wages and benefits you deserve. Communities in Pottawattamie County and other counties surrounding were getting the short end of the stick before Trump and Ernst. They'll get the short end of the stick again if we don't make the right vote in this primary. And that's why it's so important you send me to the US Senate. I'll be a voice for all Iowans. I'm ready to be that transformative leader to usher in a new era in politics, a new frontier, and to make tomorrow better than today. Go see how at eddiemauro.com. We're doing live shows every day. Go check it out. Come and ask your questions. We'd love to have you.
All right, thank you very much. On behalf of the Pottawattamie County Democrats, thank you all for joining us. Please remember to request those absentee ballots and to mail in your ballots. Everybody have a good evening.
Thank you.